What if I told you there's a way to practically eliminate weeding from your garden routine? Welcome back to Senior Green Thumbs. I'm here in my garden where you can see behind me, not a weed in sight in these beds. That's not because I spend hours weeding every week, it's because I've learned to let my plants do the work for me. The secret is understanding how nature works. These plants I'm about to show you use what scientists call competitive exclusion. They're so efficient at claiming space, hogging nutrients, and blocking sunlight that weeds simply can't get a foothold. Think of them as your garden security team. The key is choosing plants that spread quickly, create dense coverage, and have aggressive root systems. And here's the beautiful part: once they're established, most of these require almost zero maintenance. Plant 1, Pachysandra. Let's start with the undisputed champion of shade ground cover, Pachysandra. Look at this thick carpet of evergreen leaves. I planted this area 5 years ago, and I haven't pulled a single weed here in the last 3 years. Pachysandra works because it creates such dense coverage that light can't reach the soil. No light means no weed germination. It's that simple. This stuff thrives in deep shade where your lawn gives up, and it stays green year-round. Here's what makes it so effective. It spreads about 6 to 12 inches per year through underground runners. Plant them 6 inches apart, be patient for 2 years while they fill in, and then enjoy a lifetime of weed-free gardening. The best part? Once established, they're practically drought-proof. I water this maybe twice a year during severe droughts. Perfect for those problem areas under big trees, where nothing else will grow. What really impressed me is how it handles foot traffic. While you shouldn't use it as a main walkway, it bounces back quickly from occasional stepping. The deer in my neighborhood completely ignore it, which is more than I can say for most of my other plants. I've also noticed that fallen leaves from overhead trees just disappear into the Pachysandra carpet, creating natural composting right in place. The root system is so efficient that it actually improves the soil over time, making the coverage even denser each year. And here's something most people don't know: those tiny white flowers in spring, they're actually quite fragrant if you get down close to smell them. Plant 2. Creeping Thyme. Now if you want ground cover that works double duty, creeping thyme is your answer. Not only does it suppress weeds, but it feeds your local pollinators and gives you herbs for cooking. Watch this: when I brush against it, it releases that wonderful Mediterranean fragrance. This dense mat is so tough that weeds can't break through, but it's soft enough that you can walk on it. I love using this along pathways and between stepping stones. The purple flowers in summer are absolutely gorgeous, and the bees go crazy for them. But here's the secret to its weed-fighting power. Thyme actually prefers poor, dry conditions that most weeds hate. Once this gets going, it's nearly indestructible. I planted this section 3 years ago, and it's never been watered except by rain. The drier you keep it, the denser it grows, and the better it fights off weeds. The essential oils in the leaves naturally deter many insects, so you're getting pest control along with weed control. I've harvested handfuls from this patch for seasoning roasted vegetables and making herbal tea. The flavor is incredible when it's fresh from the garden. During hot summers, this ground cover actually stays cooler to walk on than concrete or stone paths. The flowers bloom in waves throughout the season, so you get color from late spring through early fall. One of my favorite discoveries is that light snow doesn't kill it. Those evergreen leaves peek through all winter, giving you year-round coverage even in harsh climates. Plant 3. Large Hostess. Now some of you are thinking, Hostess? Really? But hear me out. The large varieties are absolute weed-smothering machines. Look at the size of these leaves. They're like natural umbrellas blocking every ray of sunlight. This bed used to be my nightmare, full of crabgrass, dandelions, and every weed you can imagine. I planted these large Hostas, and within 3 years, I had complete weed suppression. The trick is choosing the right varieties. You want the giants, some in substance: Blue Angel, Empress Wu. These create clumps 3 to 4 feet across, with leaves the size of dinner plates. Nothing can grow underneath that canopy. Here's my method. I mulch heavily the first year while they're getting established. By year 2, their natural leaf drop creates its own mulch system. By year 3, it's completely self-maintaining. I literally do nothing in this bed except enjoy it. The root system of these large Hostas is incredibly dense and shallow, monopolizing all the surface nutrients that weeds need to establish. I've noticed that even aggressive weeds like chickweed and clover just give up trying to compete. The bonus is that these varieties also produce the most spectacular flower shows. Those tall spikes of white or lavender blooms are breathtaking in late summer. What really sold me on this approach is watching how rainwater behaves. The large leaves funnel water directly to the root zone, while keeping the surrounding soil dry enough to discourage weed germination. Even in fall, when the leaves die back, they create such a thick natural mulch layer that spring weeds can't push through it. Plant 4, Lamb's Ear. This silver beauty has a secret weapon that most gardeners don't know about. Those fuzzy leaves aren't just pretty, they actually release compounds that inhibit seed germination. Lamb's ear spreads both underground and by dropping its own seeds, creating this gorgeous silver carpet. I planted just 3 plants in this 4x6 area, and look at it now, completely filled in, and not a weed to be found. What makes this particularly effective is that it's drought tolerant once established, but it also handles various soil conditions. Weeds love disturbed, rich soil. Lamb's ear thrives in average to poor soil, giving it a competitive advantage. The deer and rabbits won't touch it either, which is a bonus in my neighborhood. I cut back the flower stalks, because honestly the foliage is the real star. Those flowers are tall, and not particularly attractive anyway. The texture of these leaves is incredible. Kids love to touch them, and they're soft enough that you can use them as natural bandages in a pinch. I've discovered that the silver color actually helps reflect heat in summer, keeping the soil cooler underneath, which further discourages heat-loving weeds. The plant goes semi-dormant in extreme heat, which conserves water and energy for the cooler months, when it really takes off spreading. What fascinates me most is how it forms these perfect rosettes that overlap like armor plating. There's literally no space for anything else to squeeze in. In my experience, even stubborn perennial weeds like bindweed and thistle eventually give up trying to compete with established lamb's ear colonies. Plant 5. Ajuga. If you need fast results, Ajuga is your plant. This might be the fastest spreading ground cover I've ever grown. In the right conditions, it can fill in completely in just one season. I call this my problem solver plant. See that area where the dogs run and nothing grows? Ajuga took it over in 6 months. The slope where water runs off and kills everything else? Ajuga doesn't care. Under the pine trees where the soil is too acidic, Ajuga loves it. It spreads through underground runners, sending up new plants every few inches. The spring flowers are beautiful, these blue spikes that last for weeks, and you can get varieties with burgundy, bronze, or variegated leaves for extra interest. Now I have to warn you, this plant means business. It will take over everything if you let it. Use it where you want complete coverage and make sure you can contain its spread. But for problem areas where weeds are winning, Ajuga will win the war. The variety I love most is chocolate chip. It has these tiny bronze leaves that form an incredibly dense carpet only 2 inches tall. It's perfect for areas where you need ground cover but don't want height. I've watched it completely smother dandelions by growing right over them and cutting off their light. The root system sends out runners in all directions like a spiderweb, and each node can produce a new plant. What really impresses me is how it handles temperature extremes. I've seen it green and growing under snow, and it bounces back from summer heat waves that would kill most other ground covers. The flower show in spring is worth the wait. Solid carpets of blue that rival any formal flower bed. Plant 6, Sweet Woodruff. Here's a charming ground cover that looks delicate but is tougher than nails. Sweet Woodruff creates this lovely carpet of star-shaped leaves that completely outcompetes weeds in shady areas. This section used to be overrun with wild onions and garlic mustard, those aggressive weeds that nothing seems to stop. The sweet woodruff gradually muscled them out, and now I have this uniform peaceful carpet that stays attractive most of the year. The tiny white flowers in spring are like stars scattered across the ground. And here's a fun fact, when you dry the leaves they smell like vanilla and fresh hay. Historically people used it in teas and potpourri. Sweet woodruff prefers consistent moisture, which makes it perfect for those naturally damp areas, or spots where you have drip irrigation. It self-seeds but isn't aggressive about it, so it fills in naturally without becoming a nuisance. What I find remarkable is how it creates these perfect geometric patterns with its whorled leaves, nature's own artwork spreading across the forest floor. The plant has this amazing ability to sense light levels and adjust its growth accordingly, growing taller in deeper shade and staying compact in brighter spots. I've noticed that it actually improves over time, becoming denser and more weed-resistant each year as the root system matures. The fragrance is strongest in late afternoon and evening, creating this subtle perfume in shady garden areas. One of my favorite discoveries is that the dried leaves make an excellent natural air freshener. I harvest some each fall and keep bundles in closets and drawers. Plant 7. Creeping Sidum. For hot, sunny, dry areas where most plants struggle, creeping Sidums are absolute champions. These succulent ground covers are like living mulch that stores water and creates impenetrable mats. Look at this area, pure clay soil, blazing afternoon sun, and I maybe water it twice a summer. Most weeds would fry here, but the Sidum thrives and keeps everything else out. Plus, look at these flower displays in summer, absolutely gorgeous. The secret is in those thick fleshy leaves that store water. While weeds are struggling with drought stress, Sedum is happy as can be, and because it grows in such dense mats, weed seeds can't even reach the soil to germinate. Here's the counterintuitive part: don't baby these plants. Poor soil and drought stress actually make them spread faster and stay more compact. The worse the conditions, the better they perform as weed suppressors. I love how these plants change color throughout the seasons: green in spring, sometimes reddish in summer heat, and brilliant oranges and reds in fall before going dormant. The flowers attract butterflies and beneficial insects while repelling most pest insects with their slightly bitter taste. What amazes me is how they can literally grow on rocks with almost no soil. I've seen them establish in cracks in concrete and thrive. During the growing season, broken pieces that fall off will root wherever they land, constantly expanding the colony. The cooling effect they provide is remarkable too. Walk barefoot on Sidum versus bare soil on a hot day and you'll feel the difference immediately. Plant 8. Wild Ginger. Our final plant is a native beauty that creates some of the densest ground cover I've ever seen. Wild ginger forms this incredible carpet of heart-shaped leaves that naturally suppresses even the most aggressive weeds. This entire slope was covered in invasive garlic mustard when I moved here. I planted wild ginger throughout, and over 3 years it completely pushed out the invasives. Now I have this beautiful uniform ground cover that supports native wildlife and requires zero maintenance. The leaves overlap like shingles on a roof, creating such dense shade that nothing else can establish. And because it's native to woodland environments, it knows how to compete with aggressive weeds that non-native plants often can't handle. Wild ginger spreads through underground rhizomes, slowly but steadily claiming territory. Be patient the first 2 years while it establishes, and you'll be rewarded with decades of maintenance-free coverage. The heart-shaped leaves are absolutely gorgeous. They emerge bright green in spring, and darken to a rich forest green by summer. What most people don't realize is that this plant actually produces flowers, but they're hidden at ground level under the leaves, these fascinating burgundy blooms that smell faintly spicy. The rhizome system creates this underground network that's incredibly efficient at monopolizing soil resources. I've found that wild ginger actually improves difficult clay soils over time, breaking them up with its spreading roots and adding organic matter as the leaves decompose. The native wildlife benefits are incredible. I've seen more salamanders and beneficial ground insects in this area than anywhere else in my garden. Now, before you rush to the garden center, let me share some hard-learned lessons that will save you time and money. First, start small. Pick your worst problem area and do it right, rather than trying to tackle everything at once. I made the mistake early on of planting too many areas and not being able to maintain them properly during establishment. Second, match the plant to the site. Shade lovers in shade, drought-tolerant plants in dry spots. Fighting your site conditions is a losing battle that weeds will exploit. Third, be patient. Most ground covers take 2 to 3 years to provide complete weed suppression. That first year you'll still need to weed around them. Year 2, you'll see real progress. By year 3, you should have solid coverage. Fourth, prepare your site properly. Remove existing weeds and improve the soil before planting. Give your chosen ground cover every advantage in the competition. Finally, mulch the first year. Help your ground cover get established before it takes over weed control duties. Think of mulch as training wheels that you remove once the plant can do the job alone. Here's what your timeline really looks like. Year 1, regular watering, weeding around plants and mulching. You're still doing most of the work. Year 2, less watering as plants establish, spot weeding as needed, and you'll start seeing real coverage. This is when you begin to see the payoff. Year 3 and beyond, minimal intervention, maybe dividing overgrown clumps every few years, but essentially you're done with maintenance. I now spend about 90% less time weeding these established areas compared to traditional flower beds. That's more time for morning coffee on the porch, and actually enjoying what I've created instead of constantly maintaining it. There you have it, 8 plants that will transform your garden from a weeding nightmare into a low-maintenance paradise. The best time to plant these was 5 years ago, but the second best time is right now. Remember, this isn't about being lazy, it's about being smart. Why fight weeds every weekend when you can plant once and enjoy for decades? Which of these weed-fighting champions are you most excited to try in your garden? Drop a comment below and let me know about your biggest weed challenges. And if this helped you rethink your approach to ground cover, hit that subscribe button for more Senior Green Thumb's wisdom. Until next time, keep growing, and remember, sometimes the best gardening strategy is letting your plants do the work for you.